Hey everybody, ronarray here, and in 3.28, boss rush has been a very profitable strategy. There have been multiple approaches to it, given from 20 to 30 divines approximately per hour. But a very important question always stayed with us: which boss rush is the most profitable one? So in this video, I want to compare strategies for 3 types of nightmare maps: Fortress, Ziggurat, and the last one is going to be Abomination. I'm going to compare amount of stuff that I dropped in about 1 hour and calculate divines per hour for every map. That info can help you choosing the best farm that you can do for yourself. Feel free to subscribe to the channel if you appreciate such farm comparisons, and let's go. So let's start with maps and the Atlas. At the moment, normal nightmare maps cost about 25 chaoses, and we're going to use it as the starting point. And my Atlas for boss rush is also pretty simple. I practically have bonuses for map drops everywhere to get some additional maps, and all possible explicit modifiers. I'm not using any scarabs for boss rush, but if you want, you can use Scarab of the Sinistral and Scarab of the Dextral, so it will make suffixes and prefixes useless on your nightmare maps, and that way it will be significantly easier for you to boss rush, so utilize it for your advantage. But I don't really need to use it myself, and I never use those in the task, so I had quantity on all the maps just in case. And the first map is Fortress. So Fortress is tremendously fast. As you can see on the screen right now, with a fast build such as mine, I can complete the Fortress in about 45 seconds. I think that my fastest Fortress has been about 39 seconds even, and the longest is usually about 50, maybe 55. So in 1 hour, I was able to complete 67 fortresses, which is a very big number. And another upside for Fortress is that it's still dropping Yoke of Suffering Amulet, which at the moment is about 55 chaoses unidentified, but you can gamble them, identifying them, and if you will roll a very good one, you can always sell it, so it's always an additional profit. And in my 67 runs, I dropped about 3 Yokes of Suffering, so I think on average it should be 1 per 20 runs, and you should be able to get like from 2 to 4 in 1 hour running if you're doing the map under 1 minute. So after doing Fortresses 67 times, I ended up with about 59 decaying fragments. And I also dropped 43 synthetic fragments right here, and I also have 9 right here, so 52 synthetic fragments. And there's also obviously some maps, most of them are like 5 chaoses at the moment, and I also got 2 Screaming Invitations just because I've been running it with Ether Altars up. I got 3 Onyx Amulet as I already mentioned, and I'm going to gamble them right away immediately. So as you can see, that one rolled perfect, and since it rolled perfect, I think I can sell it for about 2 divines approximately. That one is 7% and that one is 9%. I think 7% at the moment is not really cost much, and you can just sell it for maybe 40 chaoses, and 9% is a little better, and it should be about 50 chaoses approximately. Since I did 67 fortresses, I also paid 25 chaoses for each fortress map. So with the current divine prices, it leads us to 6 divines in total price. So I spent 6 divines in that hour. Now let's look at the Wealthy Exile peak of my current tab with all the fragments. As you can see, it's giving me 26 divines comparison. And we will need to add a little on top, mostly because of the some maps. Wealthy Exile calculating maps that dropped for only 2.5 chaoses, when in reality most of them go for 5, or even a little higher, like 7 in a bulk. And there's also 10 additional synthetic fragments, which are unfortunately not fitting in the stash tab. Here they are. That's about 90 chaoses more. If we will also add Yoke of Suffering on top, which is 2 divines, I think we're going to end up with about 29 divines in total, and since I spent 6 divines for a map, I think my profit been about 24 divines approximately per hour, considering that my build is already pretty fast. I think 24 divines per hour is a very decent amount for Fortress, and it could be a little lower if you will be less lucky, it could be a little higher if you will drop more decaying fragments. But that's what I ended up with for the Fortress, and I think it's a pretty decent farm compared to alternatives, especially since it's tremendously easy to do at the moment, and Fortress also is a very fast and pretty enjoyable map. However, I think if you are not going to get a perfect Yoke of Suffering, amount of currency that you are making will be lower, so it will be approximately like 22, maybe even 21 divine, but there's also chances to get a few additional yokes and make even more. Another interesting thing to mention about the Fortress. In Fortress, Mirage never spawning on the boss. In 67 runs I had Mirage on the boss once. And most of the time you're just running the boss and exiting the map without even checking for Mirage because it's spawning so far away, because Fortress is a very big map. So it leads to a situation when you will overpay for running the maps, since you're not benefiting from Mirage at all. And the next map is Ziggurat. And the biggest issue of Ziggurat boss rush farming is that the fight with Katarina is pretty long by itself. Even if your damage is tremendously high, you're still going to wait when she's using her stages. So as you can see on my screen right now, the fight will take about 1 minute 40, 1 minute 50 seconds approximately, even if you're bypassing all her stages immediately. So in my 1 hour of running, I was able to complete 23 Ziggurats, and it's also by a big part because of the Mirage spawns, since Mirage in Ziggurat spawning much more often close to the boss compared to Fortress, you need to refight the Katarina in the Mirage, so you're going to get less than 30 maps in an hour, mostly because of the Mirage fights, even if you're going to do all the fights in 1 minute and 40 seconds, because of the stages. So in that time, I got a pretty decent amount of Devouring and Blazing Fragments. I got 31 Devouring Fragment and 35 Blazing Fragments. The biggest upside of doing Ziggurat is that Blazing Fragments, which usually considered bad fragments, cost about 46 chaoses at the moment, so it's 6 divines just in Blazing Fragments. And Path of Exile is giving me about 25 divines. And since I spent 23 maps that I bought, I spent 25 chaoses for each, and that's 575 chaoses for all the maps. So minus 2 divines that we spent in the maps, and we're ending up with 23 divines of profit per hour, which is a very decent number too. I think in real life it should be a little higher, mostly because, as I already mentioned, maps are going to be a little more expensive, and there are also going to be some basic drops as well. In that test I never calculated random currency drops and additional stuff like that, so only fragments. And even with only fragments we got 23 divines in the Ziggurat, which is a little less than a Fortress, but I believe that Fortress heavily relies at the moment on getting very good amulet, a perfect rolled amulet, because it's boosting the profit. I believe that on average Ziggurat should be better, especially if you're doing Katarina fight as fast as possible and will not pick particular maps which will make the Katarina much tankier, and it will take longer in this case. So Ziggurat feels like more of a stable strategy at the moment, and Fortress feels like more of a Gamba strategy, because amulets are practically a Gamba. And the next map is Abomination. The biggest upside for Abomination is how fast the whole fight is. It's only a little slower than the Fortress. As you can see on the screen right now, I'm doing Abomination in about 55 seconds. My fastest been probably under 50, and most of my Abomination runs are staying under 1 minute if there's no Mirage. But in Abomination, Mirage is spawning on top of the boss very often. If in Fortress there are practically no Mirages, in Ziggurat there are some, Abomination providing the highest amount of Mirages on top of the boss. It leads to a higher chances for additional drops such as Black Barriers, since you're going to go and interact with the Mirage overall, and it's also going to save you money in terms of spending less on Nightmare maps. In 1 hour I completed only 31 map for Abomination, not because it's long, but because there have been tremendous amount of Mirages. And I got Mirage very often in there. So that leads to me spending about 775 Chaoses and about 3 Divines for all the maps, which is a very low price and pretty cheap to attempt. And after all of that, I dropped 56 Reality Fragments and about 43 Awakening Fragments. Unfortunately, Awakening Fragments cost absolutely nothing and Reality cost significantly more. I also got more maps compared to other options and even more maps than in a Fortress. So if you will look at Path of Exile, it's giving me about 28 Divines just with Reality Fragments because of their significant price. And I think Path of Exile is missing maps again, so it should be a little higher. If you will look on my stash right here, I even had a few maps with like Array Contains Empowered Mirage. I got like 2 of them right there. And decent amount of just basic maps that should go about 5-7 Chaoses in bulk, as I already mentioned. But even if we will take Path of Exile calculation with 28 Divines, we are going to consider 3 Divines that I spent for maps. My total profit per hour running Abomination is 25 Divines at the moment, which is very nice, especially compared to other options. So in the end, we ended up with 24 Divines at the Fortress, but with a lucky drop, so I think on average it's probably going to be a little lower. 23 Divines in Ziggurat and 25 Divines per hour in Abomination. As you can see, all boss rushes are pretty close to each other, so first off you can pick the one that you enjoy the most. For example, I personally don't enjoy the fight with Katarina, and I don't really feel like it's comfortable to fight her because the stages are annoying. But if you like longer fights more, I think going for Ziggurat is a solid option. But just based on my experience, Abomination is always coming out on top because Reality Fragments at the moment cost more. And if you like to gamble, especially with the amulets, or you're going to do that earlier in the next league, for example, I think going for Fortress is a pretty solid idea as well. And I also believe that getting additional Mirages, which we have in Abomination, is a big upside because I never dropped a single Black Barrier during my run. But even 1 or 2 Black Barriers in the process, I think going to move Abomination or Ziggurat, which has Mirages too, up top in terms of profitability, and that's one of the biggest downsides in Fortress. However, if you hate searching for the Mirage and you don't want to spend additional time for it, I think going for Fortress is probably your best option, even if you will need to gamble the amulets. And for the amulets, I also recommend to corrupting bad ones in case if you are going to hit something nice out of them. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope that comparison will help you out to pick the best boss rush map for you. See you next time, and ronarray out.